All right, we're back for Unathletic. It's another episode, live and unedited, hosted by the boys, Tirtho and Adith. It's the show about sports, except we're not that good at them. And as per usual, I want to thank the listeners for their dedicated support during this trying time. We really appreciate it, and just keep doing what you're doing. So today's a bit of a special episode. We have two very incredible guests here. Both of them are undergrads at UC Berkeley. And yeah, why don't you guys take it away from there?
Yeah. Hi, guys. My name is Nolan Chopra, and I'm an undergrad at UC Berkeley, interested in tech and entrepreneurship. So glad to be on the show. Thanks for having me, guys.
But Hi, my name is Gayatri Sundaram. I also an undergraduate at Berkeley, but more interested in health and medicine.
Neat. Okay. So, Nolan, why don't you give us a background about how sports have sort of, defined a little bit about how you've chosen your college and sort of defines your thinking and shapes, sort of what your interests are today.
Yeah, totally. So back in high school, I wasn't really ever into sports, but track and field and cross country ended up being a huge part of my high school experience. And I ended up being recruited to a few colleges basically for running at the D1 level. And what ended up happening was when I was looking at schools, I found myself that in high school I'd been in a lot of situations before where, there were big races, big moments. People would write articles or newsletters talking about how my teammates and I were either projected to win or how we had expectations. And I didn't find myself getting that nervous. But me being from New Jersey on the East Coast, I found myself that when I visited Berkeley on the West Coast, I actually found myself getting really nervous. And I don't know if that was about being far away from home or whatever it was, but that was kind of an indication that it was sort of an area I needed to grow in. And that was why I ended up choosing Berkeley, to be honest. And I think sports has just been a huge part of, my life and has totally changed my outlooks on discipline and hard work.
And so how did you get involved with track and field? So before sophomore year, you weren't involved with sports at all, but then, so what sort of led you to track and field in the first place?
Yeah, basically what happened was, I think at our school, my school in New Jersey, we had a pretty storied track and field program because we had some great coaches who had a lot of experience and had trained great teams in the past. And I had heard a lot of things about how tough it was just to survive even through the practices, things like that. I guess standard stuff. And I just wanted to prove to myself personally. A lot of my friends had just kind of pushed me to it too. And I was like, I want to see if I can survive this for one season. So I started out and I tried it. And for the first half of that season, I was the slowest person in every single workout. And I always finished last. But yeah, it was a great experience, I think. And I'm really glad I ended up trying it out.
So do you still run for Berkeley today, or?
So at this point, I still don't run. I ran all throughout high school, basically. And I decided in college kind of, running was at that point a full-time thing, basically. It's 48 weeks of the year of constant training, training around 30 hours a week plus, not including meets and things like that. And I had decided for me personally that it was kind of time and been a great experience with running, and running has totally defined who I am. But it was time to focus on something new and another area which I didn't really have experience in, which for me was computer science. So that's why I decided to focus on a new chapter.
So you study EECS at Berkeley, and I take it you're more interested in the computer side of things. So I guess my question is more broad, but you said that sports have given you the sense of hard work and discipline. And what are some ways that sort of permeated into your academic life?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, it was just, our coach used to tell us something really interesting, I think, that has stuck with me. And the reason why I think my high school was so good at track and field in particular was because of the culture that my coach had created. And that was a culture and a community of hard work and discipline where basically you could look to others around you for motivation to be disciplined, be focused. And the most important thing was really, our coach used to tell us that this is like one of the only times in your life, as corny as it may sound, where you're going to be working towards something that's bigger than yourself. That's more than just you. And I think that for me, I didn't really sink in at the time, but looking back, that's so true. Like just being in that environment from the time when I started the team to when I rose up to being captain or co-captain of one of my team, the way in which I received mentorship from people who are older for me, and then I was able to give back that mentorship, and how it was just this community of brothers all working towards this one goal. That's something special that people, as they look down in their careers, even when they go to companies, they don't necessarily feel that way. And I think it's something really important to keep in mind. It can really help change, how you approach tasks and problems.
So a lot of what you've been saying, I think, intrinsically lends itself towards entrepreneurship and building things and assembling your own team and your own mission to do something cool out there. So, I mean, have you been involved with anything like that in college?
Yeah. I think Berkeley has given me some crazy experiences, and even going to before I was applying to colleges, I didn't really consider, or I didn't put as much weight on the location of where I was going to college and how that would impact me. But again, as cliche as it sounds, the fact that Berkeley is located, in I guess Silicon Valley area, in the Bay Area, had such a huge influence on me. And that's really, I guess, kindled my entrepreneurial spirit again, what I never really thought, for example, I would start a company. But yeah, I've been involved in a few cool projects, everything from political science data projects to my most recent venture was basically starting a sports betting startup.
Okay, so what's it called, and sort of walk me through, first of all, what do you guys do, and how is it different from DraftKings?
Totally. So the name of the company that I've been working on for the last year and a half is called Flipout. And Flipout is a casual alternative to fantasy sports that's totally free. It's targeted at the everyday average fan. And what we found basically is that, in conducting customer interviews, that there's a lot of people out there and they want to interact with the game. People always love to trash talk. They love to make bets. But, you can't always use something like DraftKings and put your money where your mouth is. So how can you create an environment where people can have a fun time, socially banter with their friends, and also have an organized way to keep track of who's actually correct after they make a prediction and who's not, while following live scores with their friends?
And so this is neat because Tirtho always makes a bunch of bold claims. I think he said Tyson Fury was going to lose. I think he said many things that were wrong.
No, I predicted the Tyson Fury win. What are you talking about?
Okay, maybe I said Tyson Fury was going to lose. But see, these are the reasons why we need to keep an organized way. It's not just a Word doc. We can now have some way that says I'm right 100% of the time and Tirtho is wrong, all the time. So that's neat. But I think so it's different in the sense that you don't use real money. But what's the incentive for? I mean, so kind of walk me through what the different stages were in how you made this company to where it is today, and the different pivots that you sort of made as you went along the process.
Yeah, totally. So we started out, and basically since starting it out, we've pivoted a few times on what actually we're trying to achieve with our product and the value we're trying to offer to potential customers.
Okay.
We started out basically, and our first hypothesis was, when we wanted to build this out, was exactly like I mentioned, there's so many ways where people can bet, for example, but how is it that for an everyday fan, or for so many everyday fans, why is it that so many people haven't tried fantasy sports?
Right. Not everyone is uncut gems, but yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And even if it's free fantasy sports league, I just found myself included being, a sports fan. I love sports, even in high school, huge part for me. I never actually got into that. And looking at it, it was because, sports take a long time, like the sports drafts, fantasy sports drafts, and they're somewhat limiting. So we say, okay, we want to totally rethink this. How can we create something that allows fans to engage for free with their friends and talk trash on this organized platform and make predictions? But how can we actually reward them for their engagement? So that was our first hypothesis. And what we wanted to do was create this platform where we had virtual coins on our platform that you basically would, they didn't cost you any real money.
Okay.
And what you could do with these is actually, for winning and losing predictions, you could redeem these rewards at local stores in the forms of discounts, et cetera. And from the company's perspectives, they're getting marketing to basically market their coupons and discounts to increase engagement at their own stores.
So this is a question I have about the coupons and discounts. Obviously, it's not easy being the new guy, especially when you're, 20, 21 years old, trying to get these shops to listen to you. Sort of walk me through that process, but before you go on and tell me more about how the company has changed, which I know it has.
Yeah. Totally. So that was quite an interesting experience. But basically for a few months, it was just me. At this point, we were a small 3-person team with myself and 2 of my buddies from Berkeley.
Okay.
We had a few projects together. But I would basically just go door to door and literally visit every store basically between 10 and 20 times with marketing pamphlets, trying to first talk to cashiers and managers and work my way up the ladder till I could talk to somebody who could make a decision and convince these companies that I was going to help offer value and our team was going to offer value to them by promoting their coupons on our platform and increasing engagement. And so that was a really long process, and it was just a lot of kind of brute force. But eventually we were able to land between like 10 and 15 partner companies within the Berkeley sphere.
And so I think you're underplaying just how difficult that is because, if I wanted to get more toilet paper in my dorm tomorrow, I'd have to talk to 15 different people. But you're out here trying to talk to businesses who have no obligation to you. So just give me an idea of like the amount of sheer time you might have spent. I think that's impressive in and of itself. That's a soft skill, right? That's not coding. That's not, whatever, doing economics. That's just literally going out and handing flyers to people on the street.
Yeah, it was something else. Basically, fall 2019 was after our first major launch. And so we had just released the platform. We were starting to grow up and scale.
Mm-hmm.
And, my responsibility, which earlier had been primarily coding the platform, had shifted to this. Well, my teammates took on to the work with coding. And so, fall of 2019, my friends and I, my co-founders like to joke about it, but we basically didn't go to school that semester. I would spend between 40 and 50 hours a week just on the company.
No way.
8 to 9 hours a day talking to business owner after business owner after business owner and working on the other variety of issues or basically challenges that we were facing with the platform, everything from legal, financial, marketing to actually onboarding these companies.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Time I saw it was just always like Flipout, and I'm so behind in my classes. So definitely true. Vouch for that Nolan was just always on Flipout.
Well, okay, so that was the initial concept, and it had some success. But I understand that you guys have pivoted, and so kind of explain to me how that came about and what it is now today.
Yeah. So what we found basically was that, and without hopefully making it going too much in detail, but basically we had to, for the version of the platform, we were offering rewards, and offering the coupons at companies. Due to legal reasons involving sports betting, the types of predictions you were actually making on the platform technically weren't bets. They had to be quote unquote predictions. And what that means is that, like, when I make a prediction against you, Audit, for example, if I win, I get some coins. If you win, you get some coins. And those coin values are scaled based on how risky my prediction is, based on live sports odds that we would take in.
Of course.
Right? So if you think, the Lakers are going to win by 20, well, that's probably...
Which they always are.
Yeah, that's probably very likely. So you're not going to win very many coins. And if I make a super risky prediction, I'm right, I'm going to get a lot of coins. But the caveat was we weren't allowed to basically have any loss, even of these virtual coins. So it's not that I would be able to take away your coins if you are wrong. And again, that's due to a bunch of legal reasons. We had to talk to a bunch of lawyers to figure that out, basically. Okay,
wait. So let's pause right there. How did you get access to these lawyers? First of all, is a question that I am thinking of. So explain to me how the lawyers got involved and how you found these people to help you, the lawyers for the legal side of things.
Totally. So I guess, a quick background on what has been a little bit of a timeline of journey of Flipout. My partners and I started Flipout in January-ish, February-ish of 2019. And we built out an MVP. We coded up an app together. And we participated in one of the accelerators on Berkeley's campus that really gave us a lot of perspective onto building a product and what does it take and what kind of background research do you have to do. And then we ended up within 3 or 4 months, we pitched at a couple of demo days for our startup and the company, the MVP we had launched. We ran a beta test with like 30 or so users, and we had a few partner companies offering rewards. And basically, we ended up actually raising a round of funding, of pre-seed funding, basically only 3 to 4 months after starting this consumer product, which is somewhat uncommon, especially given the nature of the industry and how fickle consumer can be. But yeah, it was a really exciting journey. And then from there, we spent the summer building out the platform, and we kind of launched the first iteration in the fall. So once we raised a round of funding, it was a totally new world for us because now all of a sudden there was all these legal things of incorporating the company, having to deal with rules, logistics. And so, for example, we were able to get into a program with a law firm, Wilmer Hale, and they basically offered their team of lawyers to us and allowed us to defer a lot of the legal costs until we raised a certain amount of money.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that is that the investors who invested in your pre-seed round sort of, got you acquainted with the people who are going to be helping you with the legal side of things.
Kind of, yeah. Our whole world was opened up basically after kind of with help from our investors and also definitely help from the Berkeley ecosystem. There's a lot of resources. We've participated in a few different accelerators, and there's a lot of ways to get connected to those kinds of legal resources.
And so is this now sort of like are you working on this during the summer, for example, or are you is it like how much of your focus would you say to date is spent on Flipout?
Yeah, so I can honestly say for the last year and a half, the three of us, our teammates, and for a brief period, we've hired a few people, to basically help us with company efforts, everything from coding to some marketing aspects. We've put our blood, sweat, and tears the last year and a half. We've been utterly obsessed with this. And so, yeah, I think, we worked on it last summer. It was a huge, huge focus for us. We were spending most of our time with that also. And it's been a crazy ride. And, in amidst the current situation, we're kind of figuring out where things are going.
Yeah. So talking about the current situation, so you were starting to explain about how the app, for legal reasons, you can't sort of have a loss of coins. So I guess you finished telling me about the pivot that you guys have sort of taken on Flipout with.
Right. So I was mentioning it was like basically the caveat for being able to offer these rewards, at companies for users for basically kind of for free while still being able to make these sports predictions was that you couldn't actually make sports bets. So there was no actual losing of coins on the platform, even if it was just virtual coins that had no real monetary value. And so that's kind of a bummer because what we ended up realizing was our customer retention was kind of poor. Because although it was nice, people could maybe, redeem some rewards and stuff and they could make their predictions, the feeling, that an intrinsic excitement you get from beating your friends, that was what we found was really missing. And as a result, people got bored of the platform pretty quickly. And that was, an integral part of betting fundamentally that we had to remove. And the platform suffered because of it.
Okay.
But yeah, basically after that, what happened was we pivoted away and we just said, okay, we found basically that there were plenty of users on our app who had no access to the rewards. For example, some random users who had downloaded it internationally. And they had no hope of ever redeeming the rewards, right? Because there's no rewards offered internationally. But they
can't come to Berkeley, yeah.
Yeah. They still were some of the most active users on our platform. And what we found was, we had initially this whole plan too, where we were going to offer online rewards and, even use some of our funding to help support those rewards that we could ship them anywhere in the country and make partnerships with, online retailers to offer coupon codes that could be accessible to anyone. So geographical factors weren't a limit. Sure. But we found we didn't even need to go there because people were just having fun with the trash talking and the fundamental aspects of making predictions. And that's what we wanted to put all of our focus in rather than it being divided amongst these multiple areas and trying to meet the best of a bunch of different worlds.
So what I'm hearing is it's more like fantasy sports or a better version of that and a different take of it.
Yeah. As of today, I'd say Flipout is a casual alternative to fantasy sports. You're not limited and you can buy a single sport and you can follow live scores on our app while you're watching the game, make predictions before or during the game. And you can just make a quick casual prediction with friends and being able to make a prediction in 10, 15 seconds and then look at how all your friends are predicting if they're correct or incorrect. That's a type of simple and easy interface that just isn't available in current fantasy sports. And also the live in-game engagement. We have updating sports odds. So like I mentioned, as the game goes on, if a team goes up by 20 and all of a sudden you predict that team is going to lose, our sports odds are going to also basically account for that and offer higher rewards based on that. And that's what adds to the excitement is the in-game engagement, which is something we're really trying to hit on.
Okay.
Yeah, so when it comes to these sort of odds and so a question I had is when you're making an app like this that's just involved in sports,
Right.
how do you go about getting things like betting odds and like being able to access even like live scores? Is that all like open data that anyone can use, or do you have to like talk to someone to get about that?
Totally. That's a great question. And basically, what we thought initially was, you know what? This has got to be easy open source data. There's got to be some like ESPN API or something where we can just get live scores. But that's just not true. There is no open source free API that we use. So we actually ended up paying for a subscription service for an API that offers us real-time updating sports odds, scores, margins, and like a whole different other variety of stats that we use in the platform. So yeah, we have to basically our kind of recurring costs is actually getting the data and paying for it.
And so with that, I think you briefly mentioned about the motivation for Flipout, but kind of, I mean, the most interesting part about a startup, at least is sort of glorified in today's day and age, is, oh, how did when you're in the trenches and before you have any funding and before anything happens and you're just three guys in a room doing nothing, eating pizza and coding, kind of walk us through kind of some of those moments for you. And I'm sure, Gayatri can chime in too about this, about what it was like to be around you guys when this was happening.
Yeah, it was something else. I think Gayatri can probably attest to when we were just first starting out, we didn't have necessarily ambitions of quote unquote turning this into a startup. We just wanted to build out something that we thought was cool. And at the time, being second year undergrads, it was kind of uncommon for us to really just full on embark on a project like that. Like we had done so to some extent, but nothing like that where we just build something that's totally our own from scratch. And so we just started out, we said, let's build it. Let's figure out how to do it. And yeah, for a period of 3-4 months between January of 2019 and basically late April, it would just be every day, do whatever we need to do to get by in classes and basically figure out how we were going to build this and take it to the next level and build and code and code and code. So that stretch was definitely filled with many, many 4 a.m., 5 a.m. nights. And I'm sure Gayatri can probably remember the three of us sitting in a tiny little apartment couch, just snuggled up to each other, just coding, just nonstop.
Literally just like staying up until the latest hours of the night, ordering like the worst unhealthy things you can think of and just like grinding it out. And I think like something that I feel like me and Nolan have always talked about is just like we always will see each other and just talk about like what we're working on and like just seeing how like Flipout really changed from like us being sophomores and just like staying up late and just being like hearing him talk about that then versus like in the fall, like once things have kind of, I guess like settled in a way, or at least have like a true like straightforward path that you're trying to take. It's really interesting.
And so how did the idea for Flipout come out? Like, I know you guys sat together and started thinking this and you had done some projects before, but specifically, how did you guys come up with the idea of, okay, let's try to do sort of like this free betting sort of idea?
Yeah, so I think it just came from basically what had happened was late in my sophomore year, me and one of my buddies, Omkar, who I had worked on a number of other projects for and research groups, etc., we had just finished, like, I guess, kind of a recruiting cycles for internships. And I feel like, we had worked really hard and we had been able to secure some internships at some big companies, which I guess should have been a relief to us because I guess it's something that at least Berkeley, in a lot of sense, I feel like there's this culture that, I need to do the next thing. I need to, if someone is getting an internship, like that's like kind of the next thing to do, the next logical step. I should try to do that too, which is, potentially flawed. But basically coming out of that, we kind of just felt a little bit, to be honest, like a little disillusioned by this whole thing. And we were like, okay, we kind of checked off this box. Like that's all cool. We worked hard and we were able to get some internships and we'll get some great work experience. But then we were kind of like, what about building something of our own? Mm-hmm. And that's when we really got the feeling that like, what is it like to create something of our own? And not even a company, just building something of our own that can offer value to other people. I think that was the premise that really intrigued us. And we were like, let's just do it. Let's put all of our focus, now that we don't have to worry about this recruiting stuff, just into building something that other people can extract value from. And that was why we started out.
That's neat. So I mean, it's cool to see that it wasn't just, I mean, it started off as a project between buddies and sort of blossomed to something else. And so with that, and I know that you guys had some interesting marketing strategies, and specifically with a football game and some sort of advertising thing that you guys are trying to do. So kind of walk me through some of the, we tried really hard, but this wasn't actually a good strategy. It just was really funny that when it went sideways. So sort of moments.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, overall, just so far, Flipout has been an incredible learning experience. And just looking at, our thoughts on just everything in regards to running a company, it's just obviously so different than when it was when we started out. I mean, we knew nothing. We knew almost nothing. We knew so little back then when we started. And I'm sure a few years from now, I'll say the same thing about where I am right now. But yeah, we tried a lot of things that didn't work. And especially one of those was interesting because when we were in one of the first iterations of Flipout, I just remember spending hours marketing at football games trying to get people to download the app. Because the hope was you get people to download the app at football games and they can make predictions on the college football game as it's happening in real time.
Sure.
Talk trash. And that's the way we want to increase engagement, have our feed on Flipout blow up where people are having fun, like in comments, talking. So to do that, I basically got huge posters printed out of our company, and we would put whatever basically our slogans or whatever, and just hold it up at a game and at the top of my lungs, just scream and just bellow and chant like different Flipout marketing things, trying to get people to basically download the app and offer this referral code that we had that would get them started on the platform with some extra coins or extra rewards, etc.
If someone was yelling "Flipout" at the top of their lungs in a stadium, I would look at them and just be like, this guy has got to be missing a screw. To be honest, he's got to be missing a screw. And I'm sure, and I know it sounds like that, but I guess that's sort of determination you have to approach something when you're building it from scratch, right? If you're eventually gonna take on and become something bigger, you have to sort of be willing to be a little bit crazy, I guess.
Yeah. And the way it was basically I had positioned and posted myself out at the front gate of the football stadium. So that was where there was most traffic. It's basically so many people walking into the game and leaving at different times.
Sure, yeah.
So that was the optimal position where people are just walking, talking, and not really doing anything, getting excited or getting ready to go into the stadium. And so that was the moment I was like, this is my thing. I'm going to hand out these flyers that have a link to download the app, a tiny URL, and a referral code, hand them out like crazy, hold up my big poster, and just do anything basically to get people's attention. And yeah, I just remember trying that many times, and I would spend like 6-7 hours at a time for minimal results. It was kind of one of those things where you have to kind of just do the hard work that no one wants to do in the beginning. But I think there's definitely a lot of learning from that. And I would just come back and my voice would just be so sore from screaming.
I bet.
Yeah. It was just like to see him after the football game looking just so like worn out, voice is all gone, and just being like so many people yelled at me for yelling.
Yeah.
Seeing him do it again like the next weekend.
Yeah, definitely some very interesting crowd reactions from, you can imagine. I probably encounter like somewhere from 20 to 30,000 people each time I would do that. And there's a lot of random people that will come up to you and either say things that are kind of rude, or a lot of people will be like, wow, this guy's so determined. Like everyone's out here having fun. And this guy's just poor guy. Like I'll take a flyer. I feel so bad.
And yeah. And so you kind of hinted at it. That wasn't like, you didn't gain 20,000 people on the app through that method, did you? No, right? It was one of those things where you tried something and didn't work. But on the other end, I want to ask you a question about this, because you sort of taken on the role of I want to say a CEO or an executive at Flipout. But in the beginning, you were doing a lot of the coding stuff. Did you feel more inclined to one specific job or role, or is it something that you prefer in terms of the things that you prefer to do?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting question about sort of how my role at Flipout has shifted. But yeah, I think that's what I see. I think personally for me, and this is one of the big learning experiences I've had just at, even working at a quote unquote early stage company, really, really early stage. It's just doing whatever I can that's for the best of the team. And in the beginning, it meant that I was helping to code because, I have two really, really great peers of mine who I'm working on the platform with, my friend Omkar and my other co-founder Gaurav. And, that was the thing to do at the beginning because we needed to build a platform as fast as possible. So I was coding. But later on, the most important thing is after we've launched is actually to begin to spread it. And I felt that, kind of looking at the strengths of the team, I felt like, my strengths aligned, I could best serve the team by taking on some of these harder or not so fun tasks, because I know I could have my other buddies who are working their butt off too on the coding aspects, and they're doing a great job. So this is the best way I can help the company out now. So that's what my role will transition to. And yeah, it's afforded a lot of different experiences. It's not always so fun, definitely, but I think it's definitely helped us in some sense be the most efficient at times.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I guess, where do you see yourself? I mean, you're a junior now, but where do you see yourself, I guess, in 1 year with this, and where do you see the future of the company?
Yeah. So it's exciting. I think right now where we're at is from a financial perspective, we're still pretty much settled in with our funding. But yeah, in the future, I mean, depending on things go, hopefully, obviously, it's a bit of a tricky time right now with COVID, with being canceled. But the goal has been, to basically continue growing the platform, see how the pivots perform. And eventually our goal, at this point has been able to try to find that product market fit that's so elusive for every early stage company. And just once we find that, continue to raise more rounds of funding and grow and scale the company, but nothing more. All we can say is just like how Flipout started, or honestly, I feel like a lot of other things in my, I guess, just career, even with, for example, track, right? Like I didn't expect to have that be such a huge experience in my high school career. I didn't expect Flipout to even be what it is today necessarily. All you can do, I think, at each stage is just do your best and focus on what's in front of you and work towards achieving those goals. And at each point, you're going to make the most informed decision about whether it's worth it to keep on continuing, or what basically lies in store for you. So I'm still excited about Flipout. I think we have a lot of work to do, and I'm excited for what we can accomplish, but we're just going to play it by ear as always.
And so I think a lot of the mystique around funding is oh my God, these guys got funding. That's awesome, because especially on the East Coast where me and Tirtho sort of go to school, Baltimore, everyone loves medicine, everyone loves biology stuff, and so at least for us, it's a little bit somewhat rare that we see a lot of these tech oriented stuff. But you're in the mecca of tech, right, where everyone is sort of in this place of accelerated innovation. And so if you're allowed to say, or you can no comment, who funded your first pre-seed round?
Yeah, definitely. I think funding in of itself is like a whole nother learning experience for us. Has been a crazy journey, and we're still just only at the tip of the iceberg. We still have so much to learn. But yeah, for us, we basically ended up connecting through a few of the demo days that we had at Berkeley. We connected with a lot of investors, because basically what'll happen is a bunch of different types of investors and sometimes venture capital firms, they'll send scouts to come to these demo days. And we had ended up winning first place at one of them, and connected with a bunch of people from there, as well as a few others. And so how our process looked was basically after that demo day, from that day to up to like 2 months, we had basically just had a bunch of different meetings and conversations with investors. And they ask us everything about basically to repitch our idea each time kind of. And then they'll really dive deep into specific questions of all kinds about how are we going to tackle all sorts of problems that we might face in the future? What is our plan for X, Y, and Z? You can imagine there's a whole host of questions. And for us, we kind of discovered, at least at this stage, a lot of it is just, can you continue to give solid answers? You really believe in it. And a lot of things for these companies is they're looking, or for investors, is they're looking at the quality of the team. Have these guys worked on projects together before? What is their dynamic like? Do they see basically long-term potential? And so basically from starting out in like May when we had those first demo days to about like 2-ish months later is when we actually ended up wiring the money for our first round of funding. So there was about 2 months of actually negotiations and talking with different investors from that we had connected to earlier.
That's neat. Yeah. So I'm kind of questioned out here though. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, because actually, so I love the concept of the app, by the way. I have it right now, actually, and I'm really excited to start using it. But one thing I noticed, so like you mentioned like how you got sports was by paying for a subscription for an API that allowed you to get all this data for it.
Yeah.
So I follow a lot of sports and I like a lot of sports. But one sport that I treasure above all is soccer. And so I noticed that soccer is not available on the app. And this is like a very difficult thing because unlike basketball or football or baseball, soccer is international. So if there's no like specifics for like how you would do this, that's perfectly fine. But do you have any idea like how you'd go about maybe starting to implement soccer? Because I feel like that's like a huge demo.
Totally. Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. For us, it's definitely an area we want to eventually expand to. And we will, there's a lot of different APIs that offer everything. I mean, soccer, there's a whole host of leagues. And there's so many other sports out there too. Even cricket is another huge one, for example. And for us, we just decided this time we found an API that met our kind of bare bones needs. And, we're still looking for that elusive product market fit. But yeah, there's definitely room in the future for us I think it's a great suggestion. And obviously a lot of people love soccer. It's the most popular sport. Definitely an area you want to continue to expand into. But yeah, there's other APIs out there available that offer similar data on sports odds and live scores. And we definitely want to include that for soccer in the future.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so with that,
Yeah, I was just wondering if you'd any oh no, you go.
No, go for it.
I was wondering if you kind of answered it. I was just wondering if there was because of soccer not being localized in the U.S. aside from the MLS, if it would be any more difficult to get data on soccer than it would be on other sports, but I guess not so much.
Yeah, no. I think there's plenty of sports APIs out there. We just chose an area of focus to start out with, and that happened to be this set of sports and really getting them right. Because you can imagine, also for every sport you add on, the current model you have where you're predicting, for example, scores. Predicting scores for soccer is not exactly the same, right, as it is for basketball, right?
100%, yeah.
The magnitude of scores, for example, right? So there's a lot of more things to think about. And for us, we're sports fans of all kinds, but we just figured that, especially in the U.S., especially football is so huge. Was we wanted to put the most focus on into first, that and basketball. But yeah, totally agree. Huge area, and definitely something we'd want to expand to in the future.
So NBA, I think, has a pick'em or whatever they call them. They've been advertising that pretty heavily, where you, for your team, you can essentially pick who's going to win, how many points this person will score, how many rebounds or whatever, and it's also some sort of non-money based prediction game. Do you have any? So I guess my question is more broad. Do you have any competitors, and what are they, and how are you different?
Yeah. So you mentioned one of them, for sure, NBA Pick'em. And you can imagine this is a question that basically in every single investor meeting we get asked when investors also do their own background research. How are you different than this competitor, this competitor, this competitor? And NBA Pick'em is a great example. But basically, NBA Pick'em is a platform we looked at, when we were starting to build out Flipout, and we said, yeah, this is popular. This is great. They probably, because they're an NBA, have a lot of solid engagement. But when we look at the platform, it's basically you make a bunch of picks on who's going to win, lose. There's also a margin of score. But the point is the process is somewhat anonymous, and it really takes away from the aspect that we were trying to hit out most, which is this social competition and interaction. There is, for example, no way on NBA Pick'em for me to play against my friends, for example. We can both play against and we can make our picks each week and see who does more. The platform isn't per se designed for that. It's more so designed for people who want to participate in these huge pools. And, there's be a huge dashboard of this week who had the highest score in the leaderboard. And that's great, and it meets a niche. But I think for us, we're looking for more of a holistic platform like Flipout that, one, covers all sports, and it's really focused around those interactions that make sports so exciting. And that really is the trash talk, banter, engagement alongside our peers and friends.
Okay.
For example, too, Flipout has a feed, for example, where you can see how your friends are doing, what they're predicting on, if they're predicting correctly or incorrectly.
And so this is more of a higher level question, but so now you have these predictions about what people think, right? And I'm assuming these are aggregated somewhere. And can you do anything with that data, right? Is there any sort of cool data science question you can ask? Because maybe you have a bunch of meta learners, right? In the sense, you have a bunch of people who are predicting, and you have the ground truth because you know what happens after the fact. Is there something you can do with that in sort of maybe building a really cool model for predicting stuff, or leveraging that data in any way, that's some sort of data science approach?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. And the answer is yes. I think this is one of the areas, we're definitely going to be looking to expanding to. And one of my co-founders, Gaurav, he has a lot of experience with machine learning in particular. He's been involved with a number of machine learning contracts with different companies, for consulting, et cetera. And he's involved with it in a lot of different orgs on Berkeley's campus. But there's so much that can be eventually done with the data of what sports fans are kind of predicting and how they're interacting around teams. You're talking about engagement from a team level where this kind of information could be helpful. Eventually, you could see even to sports franchises themselves. It's a long ways down the road, but definitely a possibility when you're seeing how fans are predicting for your team, how are they engaging around your teams, etc. And you can imagine this sort of platform of Flipout, there's other types of information that we could collect or just even ask of users to feel about their sentiment with regards to their favorite sports teams, right? And how that can affect, for example, in the future, potentially products you suggest to them based on their favorite sports teams, etc. How they're interacting, who are their favorite sports teams. So yeah, I think there's definitely, like with any cool thing, if you're able to grow it up to scale and have a lot of users, there's always cool things you can do with data. And again, definitely something we want to explore in the future more.
Awesome. Thank you for spending time with us today. And with that, check them out. Flipout's a cool app. And thank you for listening to Unathletic this week. Special episode edition.